Have you ever been so underestimated that it was actually funny? Captain Sarah Chen was having a perfectly normal Tuesday morning until a fleet of giant, spiky warships threatened to blow her and her crew out of the sky. This is the story of what happens when a bully picks on the wrong victim, and you won't believe how it ends. Sarah was in her command chair on the bridge of the survey ship Wanderlust, sipping her third coffee while watching the cosmos drift by. It was a routine mapping mission, the kind of boring job that pays the bills but puts everyone to sleep. "Captain, we've got some weird readings," Lieutenant Rodriguez called out from the sensor station. He was a fresh-faced engineer who got a little too excited about new tech and strange space stuff. "Define weird," Sarah replied, completely unfazed. After 15 years exploring deep space, she knew that weird readings were usually just space dust or signals from ancient probes. "There are multiple massive ships, maybe 30 or 40 of them. And Captain, they're huge. Each one is at least 3 times our size." Rodriguez's voice was tight, trying hard not to betray his fear. Sarah put her coffee down and walked over to his console. The display showed a perfectly formed armada of vessels. They were clearly artificial, incredibly advanced, and definitely not human. "Well, that's new," she said, her voice calm. "All right, people, let's run the first contact playbook. Dr. Kim, fire up the linguistics computer. Jenkins, hit record on everything. Martinez, tell me what kind of tech they're packing." The bridge crew snapped into action with a smooth efficiency that came from years of training. They had all drilled for this moment, but none of them ever thought it would actually happen. 30 seconds later, a transmission request popped up on the main view screen. The image that appeared was of a towering figure decked out in elaborate, spiky armor covered in glowing symbols. The alien had 4 arms, pale blue skin, and eyes that burned with a menacing red light. Behind him, rows of similar aliens stood, all looking grim and ready for a fight. "You primitive life forms aboard this tiny vessel!" The alien's voice boomed in flawless English, deep and commanding. "I am Admiral Zetharax of the Eternal Dominion, commander of the Galactic Empire's flagship. You have trespassed in Imperial space. The penalty for this crime is immediate annihilation." The bridge went dead silent. Everyone just stared at the screen, letting the words sink in. Their very first contact with an alien species, and it started with a death threat. Sarah studied the alien admiral for a long beat. Then she did something completely unexpected. She started laughing. "Oh my gosh, you're actually serious," she giggled, wiping a tear from her eye. "Jenkins, are you getting all of this? Please tell me we're recording." Admiral Zetharax's glowing red eyes flickered, showing a hint of confusion. "Do you dare to mock the Imperial Navy? We are the conquerors of 1,000 worlds. Entire civilizations tremble before us." "I'm so sorry, really," Sarah said, trying to get herself under control. "It's just, look at you. You look like you just walked off the set of a bad sci-fi movie. What is with all the spikes? Are you heading to a heavy metal concert in space?" Dr. Kim, the ship's xenobiologist, leaned forward. "Captain, from a cultural standpoint, this is absolutely fascinating. The over-the-top aggressive posture, the ornate costumes, using threats as an opening line, it's classic intimidation tactics." "Thanks for the lesson, Dr. Kim," Sarah sized, turning back to the screen where Admiral Zetharax was looking more and more flustered. "So, Admiral Spiky, what is it you want from us?" "You will surrender your ship immediately," the Admiral shot back. "Your crew will be processed for service to the Empire, or terminated. Your technology will be seized." Lieutenant Rodriguez let out a snort. "Did he say processed? What are we, cheese?" "I think he means enslaved," Martinez chimed in from the weapons console. "Although, judging by their ship designs, I'm not sure they could properly process a ham sandwich." On the screen, they could see the aliens in the background whispering to one another, looking utterly bewildered. This was clearly not going according to their usual script. "Look, Admiral," Sarah said, leaning back in her chair and picking up her coffee mug again. I get the whole scary space overlord vibe you're going for. It's very dramatic, but we're just simple explorers out here charting space rocks. We're really not in the mood to be conquered today. You refuse? Admiral Zetharax sputtered, as if the words were foreign to him. No species has ever refused the will of the Empire. It is inconceivable. Well, you might want to start conceiving, Dr. Kim said cheerfully. We're human. Doing the inconceivable is kind of our thing. Jenkins, the communications officer, raised a hand. Captain? Should I maybe send our coordinates back to Earth Command? You know, just in case these guys don't take no for an answer? Already taken care of, Sarah replied with a smirk. An automated distress beacon went out the second they showed up. It's standard procedure. Admiral Zetharax's expression twisted from frustration into something that looked a lot like panic. You've contacted your homeworld? You have just doomed your entire species. The Empire will make an example of your planet for this defiance. This time, the entire bridge crew erupted in laughter. Even the normally stoic Martinez was cracking a smile while running checks on their defense systems. Oh, buddy, Sarah said, shaking her head. You have no idea what you've just stepped into, do you? Earth isn't some quiet little paradise. We've spent thousands of years fighting each other. We got so good at it, we had to invent entirely new ways to wipe each other out. Your primitive weapons are no match for Imperial might, the Admiral roared, though his voice was starting to sound a little shaky. Primitive? Rodriguez looked personally offended. Captain, can I show him the specs for our point defense cannons? Just the unclassified version? Go for it. Education is a gift. Rodriguez typed a few commands and sent a basic technical schematic across. On the alien bridge, they could see their technicians staring at their screens, chattering frantically. That's just our asteroid mining laser, Rodriguez explained casually. You know, for breaking up rocks. The real weapons are classified, and they are way cooler. Admiral Zetharax was now visibly sweating, his intimidating armor suddenly looking ridiculous. His crew was in a full-blown panic behind him. You know what I think is going on here? Dr. Kim said to the bridge. I think these guys have spent so long bullying peaceful, primitive worlds that they've forgotten what a real military looks like. They rely on fear because they lack actual firepower. That would explain the fashion choices, Martinez added. All style, no substance. Sarah drained the last of her coffee and stood. All right, Admiral, here's how this is going to play out. We are going to finish our mission. You are going to turn your very pointy ships around and go home. And if we're all lucky, we can pretend this whole embarrassing conversation never happened. The Empire does not bargain with lesser beings. Admiral Zetharax blustered, but his voice trembled. And that's your whole problem, Sarah shot back. You think everyone is beneath you. Big mistake. Jenkins, open a hailing frequency to their entire fleet. Channel open, Captain. Sarah gave the screen her most charming smile. Attention, Imperial Fleet. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Terran vessel Wanderlust. We're peaceful explorers who took a wrong turn. We'd be happy to leave quietly. But if you're determined to pick a fight, well, she shrugged. Let's just say we know how to handle bullies. The transmission cut, leaving the aliens staring at a blank screen while the humans casually went back to work. On the sensor display, the Imperial fleet held its position, but made no move to attack. Captain, Rodriguez asked softly, what happens if they actually do attack? Sarah settled back into her chair with a confident smile. Then they're about to get a history lesson on why you never, ever corner a human. Admiral Zetharax stood on his bridge, his 4 hands clenched into fists. In his 300 years of service, he had never been so disrespected. These creatures had laughed at him. Laughed! The thought made his eyes burn with rage. Admiral, his second-in-command said cautiously, perhaps we should contact High Command before we act. These humans are different. Different? The Admiral's voice echoed across the bridge. They are primitives who got lucky. I will not suffer this humiliation. He whirled on his weapons officer, Prepare the annihilation cannon. We will teach them what Imperial power truly means. The weapons officer hesitated. Sir, the annihilation cannon is for planetary bombardment. Shouldn't we just target their ship? No, Zetharax declared. These humans think we're a joke. We will show them true power. Target that large asteroid in Sector 7. Full power. On the Wanderlust, the crew watched as the massive alien flagship began to crackle with an insane amount of energy, alarm bells ringing as their sensors tried to process the immense power buildup. Imagine you're staring down the barrel of a cannon the size of a skyscraper, wielded by a galactic empire that just rolled up to your front door to prove they're the new sheriffs in town. This is what humanity faced, and their reaction was not what the aliens expected. Captain Martinez on tactical. His voice crackled over the comms. They're charging something huge over there. These energy readings are absolutely insane. Sarah, the ship's commander, leaned forward, her expression more intrigued than alarmed. Are they targeting us? Nope, Dr. Kim cut in, clapping her hands together with glee. They're aiming at that asteroid field about 50,000 kilometers away. The big one in the middle. Oh, this is fantastic. They're showing off their toys. We get a free, harmless demonstration of their weapon systems. Jenkins, tell me you're recording this. Every last photon, Captain. Full spectrum analysis is a go. As he spoke, the Imperial warship's main cannon fired, and the void lit up like a second sun. A brilliant beam of energy tore through space, striking the city-sized asteroid dead on. The massive rock didn't just break apart. It vanished in a blinding flash of vaporized matter. The human crew watched in a moment of respectful silence. Then, Rodriguez, the chief engineer, started a slow clap. Not bad at all, he said with a grin. I'd give it a solid 6 out of 10. Maybe a 7 if they'd used some cooler color effects. The dispersal pattern was clean, Martinez observed with a professional eye. But I'm seeing a ton of wasted heat and energy scatter. Their focusing coils need a serious upgrade. Dr. Kim was already scribbling notes on her datapad. Fascinating. It's a pure energy projection, but the delivery method is shockingly inefficient. Just look at the power they had to draw for one single shot. Aboard the alien flagship, Admiral Zex Thyra's smug expression began to crumble as he listened to the translated human chatter. Sir, they're critiquing our annihilation cannon, his tactical officer stammered. And they're hailing us again. On the main view screen, Captain Sarah Chen appeared, holding a small tablet. That was quite a light show, Admiral. Very impressive. Would you mind if I showed you something of ours? Before the Admiral could refuse, she tapped the screen, sharing a video feed. It showed Earth's own asteroid belt, teeming with huge industrial machines. These drones were methodically slicing apart asteroids with focused energy beams that looked eerily similar to the one the Empire had just fired. This is just one of our standard asteroid mining fleets, Chen explained casually. We have to break down about 50 of these a day just to keep up with demand for construction materials back home. The energy efficiency is pretty terrible by our standards, but hey, it gets the job done. The Admiral stared, his multiple eyes wide with disbelief, as he watched dozens of what he now understood to be human construction vehicles casually obliterating space rocks with the power of his ship's ultimate weapon. Of course, Chen continued smoothly. This is just our industrial equipment. Our actual military hardware is classified, but I can tell you it's a bit more advanced. You know, better targeting, way more efficient, much faster recharge rates. Rodriguez leaned into the camera frame. Hey, Admiral, that cannon of yours puts out a beautiful energy signature, but you should really look into better particle focusing. We pretty much solved that problem about 50 years ago. I could send you over some of the basic engineering primers if you'd like. The Admiral's voice was a choked whisper. Basic engineering primers? Dr. Kim popped into view. It's honestly amazing that you managed to build a weapon that big without tackling the efficiency issues first. It's very retro. It reminds me of building a starship out of wood. We don't build ships out of wood, Martinez's voice added from off-screen. Exactly my point. Dr. Kim shot back. Admiral Zex Thyra spun around to face his chief engineer, his voice trembling with a mix of fury and confusion. Is any of this possible? Can they really have this level of technology? The engineer was gawking at the human video feed, his own professional excitement overriding his fear. Admiral, if their data is even remotely accurate, their mining tools are more advanced than our primary weapon systems. The power-to-effect ratio is it's breathtaking. But that can't be right. We are the masters of this galaxy. Our technology is unrivaled. Sir, the tactical officer interrupted again. Another transmission from the humans. Captain Chen was back, and this time she was failing to hide a smile. Admiral, I do hope we haven't caused any offense with our little critique. We just love sharing technical knowledge with new friends. Actually, speaking of which, would you like a demonstration of our onboard mining processor? No! The Admiral yelled, a little too quickly. That will not be necessary. Are you sure? We have a small asteroid processor right here on the ship for analyzing samples. It's just a tiny little thing, nothing like the big rigs you saw in the video, but I thought your engineers might find it interesting. The bridge crew of the Imperial flagship, the Eternal Dominion, exchanged nervous glances. If their most devastating weapon was the equivalent of human mining gear, what in the galaxy were their real weapons like? Perhaps, the Admiral said slowly, choosing his words with care, we could arrange a more formal gathering, a cultural exchange. Oh, that would be wonderful, Dr. Kim's voice piped up. I have so many questions about your culture. For instance, why all the spikes on everything? Is that a religious thing, an aesthetic choice, or do they serve some practical function? The Admiral instinctively puffed out his chest. The spikes represent the strength and indomitable power of the Empire. Right, but they don't actually do anything, do they? They're just for decoration, Rodriguez pointed out. They inspire fear in our enemies. Rodriguez let out a hearty laugh. Oh, that's adorable. We used to do that too, way back in our medieval times. Knights would put all sorts of scary-looking stuff on their armor to psych people out. Then we invented firearms and figured out that being genuinely dangerous was more important than just looking scary. A cold dread began to seep into the Admiral's gut. You no longer try to appear frightening? Why would we need to? Captain Chen asked gently. When you're truly dangerous, you don't have to advertise it. It's like an old human saying, speak softly and carry a big stick. What is this proverb about sticks? The Admiral asked. It means that truly powerful people don't need to shout or make threats, Dr. Kim explained. They can afford to be polite and calm because they have absolute confidence they can handle whatever comes their way. It's the difference between self-confidence and insecurity. A confident person doesn't feel the need to prove anything to anyone. Admiral Zex Thyra looked around his bridge at the countless spikes, the menacing red lights, and all the intimidating decor that covered every single surface. For the very first time in his long career, he wondered if it all made the Imperial Navy look strong, or if it just made them look like they were trying way too hard. Admiral, his communications officer said quietly, should we proceed with the weapon demonstration? The Admiral stared at the view screen, where the humans were waiting patiently, a friendly and disarming look on their faces. They had just watched him fire his Empire's most powerful weapon, and they had treated it like a mildly interesting high school science project. They had then compared it to their construction equipment and offered to help him make it better. No, he said, his voice firm. Signal the fleet to hold position. And perhaps we should invite our new friends aboard for that cultural exchange. He turned to his first officer. I need to understand these humans. Something is very, very different here, and I am going to find out what it is. Aboard the human vessel, Captain Chen smiled at her crew. Well, that went even better than I'd hoped. Dr. Kim, get ready for a diplomatic visit. And someone please remind Rodriguez to bring his engineering notes. I have a feeling our new friends could use a little tutoring. The shuttle bay of the Eternal Dominion was precisely as Captain Chen had imagined, enormous, menacing, and absolutely covered in spikes that served no purpose. As the human delegation walked down the ramp of their small shuttle, they were met by an honor guard of Imperial soldiers decked out in ornate armor that looked like it weighed more than a compact car. Admiral Zex Thyra strode forward with an air of what he clearly believed was profound authority. "Captain Chen, welcome aboard the flagship of the Imperial Navy." "Thanks for having us, Admiral," Sarah replied with a bright smile, her eyes scanning the bay with genuine curiosity. "Wow, you guys really committed to the whole evil empire theme. I'm impressed by the dedication." Dr. Kim was already snapping photos with her tablet. "From an architectural standpoint, this is fascinating. The intended psychological impact on species unfamiliar with this design philosophy must be quite significant." "The spikes have a practical purpose," the Admiral said, a bit defensively. "Which is?" Rodriguez asked, tapping one of the purely decorative spikes on a nearby wall. They are a symbol of our martial prowess." "So they're just for show," Martinez concluded. "That's actually kind of charming. It's like putting racing stripes on a minivan to make it seem faster." The Admiral's glowing eyes narrowed in irritation, but he kept his composure. "Perhaps you would appreciate a tour of our vessel." "Absolutely," Dr. Kim exclaimed. "This is like getting a private tour of a museum of intimidation tactics. Do you have any literature on the design choices? I would love to read up on the cultural significance." As they moved through the massive ship's corridors, the humans kept up a running commentary that seemed to make the Imperial crew members increasingly uneasy. "Oh, check out the red lighting," Jenkins noted. "Very ominous. Though from an ergonomic perspective, red light significantly reduces a person's ability to read detailed displays. We used to use it in our old submarines until we figured out it was causing more accidents than it prevented." "The ceiling height is certainly impressive," Dr. Kim added, "but it's an incredible waste of internal volume. You could easily fit another 3 decks in here if it were planned more efficiently." "Hey guys, get a load of these control panels," Rodriguez said, stopping by a console. "Actual physical buttons for everything. That's so retro. We had systems just like this about 200 years ago, right before we standardized neural interfaces." Admiral Zex Thyra stopped dead in his tracks. "Neural interfaces?" "Oh yeah," Rodriguez explained, as if talking about the weather. "Direct mind-to-machine connection. It's way faster than typing, and you never have to worry about typos." As they moved on, a young Imperial technician whispered to his supervisor, "Are our computers primitive?" "Quiet," the supervisor hissed back, though his own expression was filled with doubt. The tour finally reached the bridge, and the humans did their best to look impressed by the sheer scale of it all. But their compliments weren't quite hitting the mark. 4. "Wow, this is something," Sarah said, her eyes scanning the immense command center. "It's like a starship bridge decided to dress up for Halloween. The dedication to the spooky aesthetic is just incredible. I really admire the commitment to style over, function," Dr. Kim chimed in. "It takes guts to make every single surface painful to touch. Those spikes on the command chair must be a real challenge during long shifts. They remind the commander of the heavy burden of leadership," Admiral Zex Thyra stammered weakly. "By causing literal physical pain?" Martinez asked. "That's actually kind of genius in a messed up way. Nothing screams, 'I'm in charge,' like sitting on a throne of spikes for 8 hours straight." A wave of gloom washed over the Imperial bridge crew. Their pride and joy, the most powerful warship in the entire galaxy, was being roasted by these strange aliens who were treating it like some quirky roadside attraction. "Perhaps," the Admiral said, his teeth clenched, "you'd be interested in our tactical systems?" "Sure thing," Sarah replied. "But I gotta ask, are those actual manual star charts you're using? We can see them from all the way over here." The navigation officer looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. The charts provide proven reliability and serve as a backup in case of computer failure. But you do have redundant computer systems, right? Rodriguez asked. And quantum backup storage? Emergency AI navigation protocols? The silence was deafening. Oh, you don't, do you? Dr. Kim said softly. You're running your critical navigation on a single point of failure system. The Imperial crew started shooting nervous glances at each other. Their navigation computers, which they'd always thought were the pinnacle of technology, were apparently museum pieces by human standards. Let me take a wild guess, Martinez said, peering at the weapons control station. Manual targeting for every weapon, no predictive firing algorithms, and zero automated threat assessment. Manual systems are more reliable, the weapons officer shot back. They can't be compromised by enemy hacking, Jenkins pointed out, unless the person operating them makes a mistake, or gets tired, or distracted, or, dies. We kind of solve those issues with redundant AI systems and neural-linked backup operators. Admiral Zex Thyra was starting to feel a little queasy. Maybe we should move on to military tactics. The Empire has brought thousands of worlds to heal through superior strategy. Really? Dr. Kim's eyes lit up with genuine curiosity. What's your standard opening move? We arrive in orbit with an overwhelming force and demand their surrender. If they refuse, we make an example of their military targets until they comply. The humans just stared at each other, completely baffled. And that's it? Sarah asked. That's the entire playbook? It has never failed us. But what if they don't give up? Rodriguez pressed. What if they can actually put up a real fight? What if they have tech that's better than yours? That has never been the case. Dr. Kim was scribbling furiously in her datapad. So you've only ever fought species that were way behind you technologically. No one on your level. No actual peers. We are the most advanced civilization in the galaxy. Were, Martinez corrected him quietly. You were the most advanced, until today. Those words just hung in the air, heavy and solid. For the first time, Admiral Zex Thyra truly grasped the situation. These humans weren't just unimpressed with the Empire's power. They were generations ahead of it in every way that mattered. Admiral, his communications officer suddenly called out. We're getting reports from the entire fleet. The humans. They're broadcasting. Broadcasting what? Everything, sir. This entire tour. Other species are watching it live. Sarah offered an apologetic smile. Oh, sorry about that. We automatically record and transmit all first contact situations for scientific review. It's just standard procedure. Hope that's okay. You're showing this to your whole species? And anyone else who tunes in? It's for education, Dr. Kim added. I'm going to write a fantastic paper on imperial psychology and social hierarchies. This footage is an absolute goldmine for my research. Admiral Zex Thyra felt the room start to spin. Right now, across the galaxy, civilizations were watching the mighty Imperial Navy get casually dismissed by a tiny survey ship. They were watching him squirm as these aliens treated his flagship like a theme park ride. Perhaps, he said slowly and carefully, we could continue this conversation in private. Of course, Sarah agreed. But just so you know, the recording is still on. Safety reasons, first contact protocols, you get it. The Admiral squeezed his glowing eyes shut and wondered if this is what defeat felt like. Not a crushing blow from a superior weapon, but the slow, agonizing realization that every single thing he believed about his empire's greatness was a lie. Dr. Kim, he said at last, what exactly is your paper going to conclude about imperial psychology? Dr. Kim looked up from her notes, her expression full of genuine sympathy. That you're a classic case of a civilization that got to the top using a technological lead and then just stopped trying. Because you never had to. It's a common story. We went through a similar phase ourselves. You did? Oh, absolutely. We called them the Dark Ages. A very educational time for us. We learned a great deal about humility. Admiral Zex Thyra had a sinking feeling he was about to learn that very same lesson. Grand Admiral Thexmore read the reports from Zex Thyra's fleet with a rage that grew with every word. The humans had made a mockery of an Imperial fleet, broadcast the humiliation to the galaxy, and then just casually went on with their mapping mission. Even worse, their blatant disrespect for Imperial might was stirring up trouble on dozens of subjugated worlds. Subject species were starting to get ideas. "This will not stand," the Grand Admiral roared to his war council. "If we let these humans get away with this, our empire will crumble from within. We must make an example of them that will be remembered for 1,000 years." The War Council, made up of the Empire's most ruthless military minds, nodded grimly. Their power was built on a foundation of fear. If the galaxy stopped fearing them, it was all over. "What do we know about their home world?" asked Admiral Sexisthera, the chief of strategic planning. "The planet is called Earth," the intelligence officer reported. "A standard Class M world, roughly 4 billion years old. Population is estimated around 8 billion. They seem to have a unified government for off-world operations, though their planetary politics are messy. Defenses are unknown. Our long-range scans picked up some standard orbital platforms, but nothing that looked particularly advanced. It seems their space fleet is their primary shield." Grand Admiral Thexmore allowed himself a cold, cruel smile. "Then we will shatter their world and hang its pieces in the sky as a warning. Assemble the 3rd Imperial Battle Fleet. I want 200 ships, including our new Devastator-class dreadnoughts." "Sir, isn't that a bit much for one little planet?" "After the embarrassment Zex Thyra suffered, I'm not taking any chances. We will descend upon them with such overwhelming force that the very thought of resistance will be absurd." 3 weeks later, the colossal Imperial Armada ripped through hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. The sight was truly breathtaking. 200 of the Empire's deadliest warships, arranged in a flawless, intimidating formation, their hulls practically vibrating with weaponized energy. "This is Grand Admiral Thexmore of the Galactic Empire," he broadcast towards the blue planet. "You have insulted the honor of the Empire and spread seditious lies. Your world is hereby condemned. Surrender now, and we will spare your civilians. Resist, and we will burn your planet to the bedrock." The reply came from a woman with a calm, pleasant voice. "Hello, Admiral. This is Admiral Patricia Santos of Earth Defense Command. We've been expecting you. Listen, before we get this party started, would you mind just holding your position for about, say, 10 minutes? We're still getting the popcorn ready." "Popcorn?" Grand Admiral Thexmore was utterly confused. "For the show. Our entire planet is about to tune in to watch this live. It's being billed as the biggest entertainment event of the year. Honestly, your timing is perfect." The Grand Admiral felt that old, familiar chill run down his spine. These humans were treating an invasion by his Grand Armada like a season finale. "You have 10 minutes to surrender unconditionally. After that, the bombardment begins." "Oh, we don't really do the whole surrender thing," Admiral Santos replied cheerfully. "Not really our style. But 10 minutes works great for us. That should give the commentators enough time to finish the pre-show analysis." On the Imperial flagship's bridge, the tactical officer was staring at his console, his brow furrowed with concern. "Sir, I'm picking up some very strange readings from the inner system." "What kind of readings?" "Energy signatures, sir. They're consistent with, well, with our own ships. But there's nothing on the visual scanners." Grand Admiral Thexmore frowned. "Explain." "Sir, it's as if there are ships right there, but they're completely invisible to our sensors. Some kind of stealth technology, maybe?" The comms channel crackled back to life. "Admiral Thexmore, Santos here again. All our preparations are complete. Ready to start? Start what? The show. Oh, and by the way, we invited a few guests. Hope you don't mind a little audience. Just then, the space around the Imperial fleet exploded with light. Hundreds of human ships blinked into existence, their stealth fields dissolving in perfect sync. They'd been hiding all over the system, just waiting. But these weren't the tiny survey ships the Empire was expecting. These were warships, clearly designed by people who cared more about what a ship could do than how it looked. They were all clean lines, smart designs, and weapons that practically thrummed with raw power. How? Grand Admiral Thexmore could only whisper. A friendly voice came over the comms. Oh, that? It's cloaking technology. We've been using it for about 50 years now. Super useful for avoiding drama, you know? We really just like to be left alone. Imperial sensors were screeching, trying to make sense of the chaos. The human fleet was smaller, sure, but every single one of their ships registered as light years ahead of anything the Empire had. This is impossible, the Grand Admiral stammered. No one has better technology than the Empire. Well, this is awkward, another human voice chimed in. Captain Rodriguez here. I'm actually the engineer who offered to upgrade your weapons. The offer's still on the table, but I get it if you're a little red-faced right now. Sir, the tactical officer said, his voice tight with panic. The human ships are forming up for an attack. Their targeting systems are locking onto us. Return fire! All ships, open fire! The Imperial fleet unleashed a blinding storm of energy beams and missiles. Space itself seemed to tear apart from the fury of 200 warships firing at once. It was a terrifying sight that had crushed the spirit of countless races across the stars. The human response was like a lesson from a master. Every single shot from the Empire was swatted out of the sky by defenses they didn't even know were possible. Tiny laser grids, shimmering energy shields, and smart missiles wove a protective net around the human ships, making them completely untouchable. Interesting, Admiral Santos noted, as if she were watching a science fair project. Your accuracy isn't half bad. The targeting software could use some work, but the fundamentals are solid. And then, the humans fired back. It wasn't a chaotic light show like the Imperial volley. Instead, each human ship fired a single, perfectly aimed shot. The result was catastrophic. One by one, in a neat little row, Imperial ships started to detonate as the human weapons sliced through their defenses as if they were made of foil. "How are they getting through our shields?" someone screamed over the Imperial channel. A human voice, clearly listening in, calmly replied, "We're not. We're just going around them. Your shield technology is about 100 years out of date. In less than 5 minutes, half of the Imperial fleet was either scrap metal or floating wreckage. The ships that were left found themselves boxed in by human vessels that moved with an unnatural grace and shot with chilling precision." "This is Captain Martinez of the human ship Retribution," another calm voice announced. "Imperial fleet, you are to power down all weapons and prepare to be boarded. If you try to resist, we will be forced to destroy what's left of your fleet." Grand Admiral Thexmore just stared at his tactical screen, completely numb. The most powerful fleet the Empire had ever put together was being taken apart piece by piece, and the humans were treating it like a routine drill. "Sir," his communications officer said softly, "you have a private message coming in from Admiral Santos." An image of a middle-aged human woman appeared on the main screen. She was sitting on a starship bridge that looked normal. No scary spikes, no dramatic mood lighting, just quiet, professional competence. "Admiral Thexmore," she said, her voice gentle, "this doesn't need to go on. Your people are dying for absolutely no reason. Surrender, and we will get medical care to your injured and give your survivors a safe trip home." "The Empire does not surrender," the Grand Admiral snarled through clenched teeth. "That's your decision," Admiral Santos said with a sigh. "But you should probably know, we've been chatting with some of the worlds you rule over, And a lot of them are really interested in what's happening here today. In fact, some of them are starting to ask about getting their own independence. The Grand Admiral felt his entire world start to shatter. It wasn't just his fleet that was being destroyed. It was the entire foundation of the Empire's power. If all their subject races saw this defeat, the Empire itself could fall apart. "What do you want from us?" he finally asked, his voice breaking. "Honestly, we just want you to leave us, and everyone else, alone. We don't want your territory. We don't want to rule your people. And we definitely don't want to wipe you out. We just need you to stop being a bully." "And if we say no?" Admiral Santos gave him a sad smile. "Then I guess we'll have to keep teaching you lessons until you finally get it. But I really hope it doesn't come to that. War is such a waste, and we've got much better things to do." Grand Admiral Thexmore looked at the smoking remains of his fleet, then at the perfect formation of human ships that held them in a gentle grip. For the first time in the Empire's long history, they had met someone they couldn't crush, couldn't scare, and couldn't even begin to comprehend. I surrender," he whispered. Those 3 words, never before spoken by an Imperial commander, echoed across the galaxy, broadcast live to billions of souls who never dreamed the mighty Empire could ever be beaten. The fallout from what history would call the Battle of Saul happened just like Admiral Santos said it would. Within hours of Thexmore's surrender hitting the galactic airwaves, 17 Imperial worlds erupted in open rebellion. Within a few days, that number swelled to over 100. The humans, good as their word, sent medical teams to help the wounded Imperials and gave the survivors a ride home. But they also did something nobody in the galaxy had ever done. They live-streamed the entire relief effort, with a Dr. Kim providing commentary on the psychology of it all. "What you're seeing here," Dr. Kim explained to her massive audience, "is what happens when a government built only on fear finally gets punched in the nose. The Empire never learned how to actually lead," she continued, "because they could always just scare people into obedience. Take away the fear, and the whole rotten system just falls apart." Captain Chen, who was now a huge galactic celebrity, was giving interviews from her ship, the Wanderlust. "The thing everyone needs to get," she told a reporter from Centauri News, "is that this was never about us versus them. This was about bullies versus everybody else. We just happened to be the new kids on the block who weren't scared of them." The Empire's reaction was, predictably, more of the same. They sent out more ships to crush the rebellions, declared martial law, and screamed at everyone to get back in line. It didn't work. For the first time ever, the rest of the galaxy had seen with their own eyes that the Empire could be beaten. And more importantly, they saw the humans offering to help anyone who wanted to be free. The human response to this was typically them. They set up something called the Freedom Broadcasting Network, giving rebel groups a secure way to talk to each other across space. They also offered tech support, medical supplies, and something that blew the galaxy's mind: help with no strings attached. "We aren't trying to build our own empire," Admiral Santos explained in a broadcast that reached literally every corner of the galaxy. "We don't want to be in charge of anyone. We just want to help people be in charge of themselves." The Empire's top brass was completely stumped by this. They understood taking over planets. They understood stealing resources. But they could not wrap their minds around the idea of helping people for free. "What's their angle?" Admiral Zexathyra demanded during a meeting on the Imperial homeworld. "What are they really after?" Imperial spies had been studying humans for months and couldn't find a secret plan. "Sir, they appear to be genuinely nice," one analyst reported. "Their private communications, which we're reading, seem to prove they actually believe the things they're saying." "That's impossible," Zexathyra roared. "No advanced civilization gets to that level without being aggressive and taking what they want." "The humans did, sir. It seems they built their entire civilization on cooperation instead of conquest. Meanwhile, the humans were just happily doing what they loved, solving problems. They set up camps for refugees fleeing the Empire's wrath, shared farming tech with planets that were starving, and offered to protect any world that asked for it. But their most powerful weapon, the one that truly crippled the Empire, wasn't a laser or a missile. It was their comedians. Human comics all over the galaxy started roasting Imperial culture. Stand-up routines about evil empires with terrible interior design skills became massive hits. Satirical videos showing how Imperial tech was basically a museum exhibit went viral, spreading laughter and courage to billions. But the real damage, the wound they couldn't cauterize, came when humans started making parody recruitment videos for the Imperial Navy. They hired actors in laughably oversized spiky costumes who fumbled with the most basic technology. After his run-in with Captain Chen went viral, Admiral Zathyra became the reluctant star of a dozen comedy bits. His over-the-top threats and baffled reactions to human gadgets were remixed into dance tracks and became the galaxy's favorite memes. "They're turning us into a joke," he told the Imperial Council, his voice tight with humiliation. "Billions of beings are laughing at us." The propaganda minister added, "It's worse than that. Our own citizens are sharing the videos. Imperial loyalty is cratering because everyone thinks we're a bunch of clowns." The final nail in the coffin was when the humans announced their plan to solve the galactic crisis, a huge diplomatic conference on a neutral planet. Every species was invited to send a representative to hash out a new galactic government, one built on cooperation, not conquest. The Empire was invited, of course, but just as one voice among many, with no special treatment or authority. "This is an outrage!" roared Supreme Emperor Vexthal from his throne. "The Empire has ruled this galaxy for 10,000 years. We will not be treated as equals by our former subjects." His furious speech was broadcast live across the galaxy, courtesy of human transmission tech that the Empire had no way of blocking. The response was instant, and it was devastating. Laughter. Entire planets were howling at the Emperor's tantrum. Human social media feeds exploded with sarcastic comments about washed-up empires having a meltdown. Even some Imperial citizens were secretly passing around the jokes. 6 months after that first contact, Admiral Zera found himself huddled in an escape pod, drifting in the void. His latest ship had just been taken down by a rebel fleet fighting with human-supplied weapons. While he waited for a rescue, he tuned his emergency radio to the galactic news. The Galactic Confederation officially voted today to offer humanitarian aid to Imperial refugees, a cheerful news anchor reported. Human representatives stress that this aid is for everyone, no matter their past actions or political views. The anchor continued. In other news, the former imperial world of Kepler-7 has successfully transitioned to a democracy with help from human advisors. Their new constitution guarantees rights for all citizens and, interestingly, bans the use of spikes in government buildings. And in our entertainment block, the comedy smash hit Humans Explain Things to Confused Aliens has been picked up for a second season. Tonight's episode features comedian Jenny Martinez teaching former Admiral Zathyra how to use a computer mouse. Admiral Zathyra switched off the radio and just stared into the star-dusted blackness. Somewhere out there, humans were still exploring, still helping people, and still treating the total collapse of the most powerful empire in history as just another interesting Tuesday. A ship appeared on his scanner, not an imperial vessel, but a humanitarian ship from the new Galactic Confederation. As it got closer, he saw it was crewed by a mix of species that the Empire used to rule. "Unidentified escape pod. This is the rescue vessel Hope's Light," a voice crackled over the radio. "We're here to help. Do you require medical attention?" This is Admiral Zexathyra of the Imperial Navy," he managed to say. There was a short pause. Then, a new voice came on, and it sounded like they were trying not to laugh. "Oh hey! You're the guy from the videos. Don't worry, Admiral. We're still going to pick you up. The humans taught us that everyone deserves a second chance, even the guys who used to have their boots on our necks. As the tractor beam pulled him in, Zexathyra finally understood. This was the humans' real victory. They didn't just beat the Empire in a fight. They taught the entire galaxy there was a better way to exist. The last emperor of the Galactic Empire officially stepped down 3 months later. His final galaxy-wide broadcast was just 2 words. "We surrender. Please, teach us how to be better." Captain Chen, now Admiral Chen of the new Galactic Exploration Service, personally replied to the Emperor's message. "You don't need to surrender," she said. "Just pull up a chair and let's talk this through together. And maybe lose the spikes? They're really not doing you any favors." For the first time in recorded history, the galaxy was at peace. It wasn't one with fleets and armies, but with a simple human idea. Treat bullies like the insecure, confused kids they really are. Dr. Kim's book on the Empire's fall became a bestseller among 47 different species. Its title was Pure Human Wit: How to Topple a Galactic Empire by Laughing at It, a Study in Applied Psychology. The subtitle was even better: Why Being Scary is Less Important Than Being Competent. The massive crystal spires of Nexus Prime shot into the purple sky like jagged bolts of frozen lightning. Inside the tallest tower, Admiral Kethvar stood before a shimmering wall of screens. All 6 of his arms moved with practiced grace as he absorbed reports from every corner of the galaxy. The Zephyrian hegemony held 847 star systems in its grasp, and Kethvar was the military genius who kept them there. But today was different. Today, something new had arrived. "Admiral," his aide whispered, stepping lightly. "We've intercepted a transmission from an uncharted world." Kethvar's huge black eyes swiveled to the smaller Zephyrian. "Uncharted? Impossible. Every star in this sector is on our maps. The signal is from a small, yellow star. 3rd planet. They call themselves humans." The word felt clumsy and strange in the Zephyrian tongue. Kethvar clicked his mandibles, a sign of mild curiosity. "Put it on screen." The main view screen shimmered, and a human woman appeared. She stood in what seemed to be a crude, functional room. Her skin was dark, her hair was tied back, and her clothing was ridiculously simple compared to the flowing robes of the Zephyrians. "Greetings," the human said calmly. "I am Dr. Elena Vasquez, and I speak for the people of Earth. We've noticed your empire's expansion in our direction. We approach you in peace, hoping to open a dialogue and perhaps trade." Kethvar's mandibles began clicking faster. Around the command center, other Zephyrians began to gather and stare. Dr. Vasquez went on. "We know you are a vast, spacefaring civilization. We're new to this ourselves, but we believe we have a lot to offer. Our planet is rich in resources, and our people are hungry to learn and to share what we know." The screen showed images of their world: vibrant blue oceans, lush green continents, and cities with tall buildings that looked like children's toys next to Zephyrian crystal craft. "However," Dr. Vasquez said, her tone hardening just slightly, "we must insist that you halt any aggressive moves toward our system. While we would always choose peace, we will defend our home if we must." The screen went black. A deep silence hung in the command center for a moment. And then Kethvar started to laugh. It was a high musical sound that echoed off the crystal walls. Soon the other Zephyrians were laughing with him. "Warn us!" Kethvar choked out between peals of laughter. "Did that tiny primitive creature just try to warn the Zephyrian hegemony?" He tapped his personal communicator. "Send this transmission to every fleet commander. I want them all to see what these lesser species consider diplomacy." Within hours, the human message was being played on every ship in the hegemony. In war rooms and officers' lounges, Zephyrians watched in absolute hysterics as the little human dared to threaten their magnificent empire. Kethvar convened his war council. The most brilliant military minds of their species assembled in the great crystal chamber where the conquests of hundreds of worlds had been planned. "So," Kethvar asked, "what do we know about these humans?" General Thexala brought up a holographic display. "Our long-range scans show a single planet, population around 8 billion. Their technology is remarkably primitive." The display showed human weapons, simple guns that fired small metal slugs, bombs that used basic chemical reactions, and aircraft that still burned fossil fuels. "They have recently mastered nuclear fission," Thexala continued, "but their most powerful bombs are roughly equal to one of our standard-issue sidearms." More images appeared, human spacecraft that looked like clunky metal cans with fire shooting out of one end. They were clumsy, slow, and barely able to break free of their own planet's gravity. "Their fastest ship would take centuries to reach the nearest star," another general added. "They've only just started exploring their own solar system," a third officer reported. Kethvar examined the information. "And their military?" he asked. "Laughable," Thexala scoffed. "They still wage war with projectile weapons. No energy shielding, no plasma cannons, no reality warping technology. Their biggest warships are smaller than one of our troop shuttles." The chamber once again filled with the musical laughter of the Zephyrians. These humans were like toddlers waving sticks in a forest full of giants who could command the stars themselves. "Admiral," a younger officer spoke up, "perhaps we should just ignore them. They can't possibly pose a threat to the hegemony." Kethvar's laughter died in his throat. A chilling glint sparked in his dark eyes. "Ignore them? Absolutely not. These humans," he announced, his voice echoing in the chamber, "have given us something far more precious than resources." He rose from his seat and strode to the center of the room. "They've given us an opportunity." We had just brought the mighty Vorak Empire to its knees, and our newest subjects were getting restless. They needed a reminder of what happens to those who challenge our authority. The War Council caught on instantly. The hegemony had swallowed several new species whole, and some were whispering of rebellion. A very public display of power would put an end to that. "Earth will be our example," Kethvar declared. "We will show the entire galaxy the price of primitives daring to threaten our rule." General Thexala gave a slow, deliberate nod. "How large of a fleet are you recommending?" Kethvar paused, thinking it over. Sending too small a force might actually struggle against the humans' crude little weapons, but sending a massive armada would make it look like we actually took them seriously. 40 ships, he decided. A patrol fleet, more than enough to crush any resistance, but small enough to scream contempt. "And who will lead them?" another asked. "Sub-Admiral Veltar. This will be a good learning experience for him. A simple conquest against primitives should teach him the fundamentals." The plan was as elegant as it was cruel. The sub-admiral was young, hungry for glory, and would arrive at Earth expecting an easy win. The humans would fight back with their little toys, and Veltar would obliterate them. The whole galaxy would be watching, and they would learn their lesson. Kethvar keyed the comms system, broadcasting his message across all of hegemony space. The announcement was clear. In 3 months, a Zaharian fleet would make an example of the primitive world that had the nerve to threaten them. The galaxy's reaction was instantaneous. Betting pools popped up everywhere, wagering on how long Earth could possibly last. A few generous souls gave the humans a full day. Most predicted it would be over in hours. Nobody thought they'd survive a week. On recently conquered worlds, the subjugated species watched with grim interest. The Voraks, a species who fought with strict codes of honor, whispered among themselves. Maybe they'd learn a thing or two watching how the Zaharians handled a truly desperate, cornered enemy. Meanwhile, on Earth. Dr. Sue. Elena Vasquez stood in the very same room where she'd recorded her fateful message. All around her, a frantic energy buzzed as scientists and military officers scrambled. Deep space sensors had just confirmed it. A Zahirian fleet had left Nexus Prime. 3 months, Captain Marcus Chen said, his eyes glued to the sensor data. They're giving us 3 months to prepare. Or to surrender, Dr. Vasquez added quietly. Chen's gaze met hers, his eyes like steel. Are we even considering surrender? Dr. Vasquez thought of her own children, and all the children of Earth. She thought of the unshakable human spirit that had carried them from Haus to the cosmos. She thought of every single generation before them that had stared down impossible odds and had somehow, some way, found a way to win. No, she said, her voice firm. We fight. Across the entire planet, the message spread like wildfire. Humanity's first real contact with an alien civilization was going to be a war for their very existence. The aliens were expecting an easy victory over a bunch of primitives. They had no clue what humans were capable of when their backs were slammed against the wall. They'd never encountered a species that simply refused to accept defeat. They were about to witness the terrifying, beautiful creativity of a people with absolutely nothing left to lose. The Zahirian hegemony was about to get a crash course in why you never, ever dismiss a threat from Earth. Sub-Admiral Veltar felt a thrill course through his veins as his fleet dropped out of warp at the edge of the Sol system. Surrounding him, 40 Zephyrian warships shimmered into existence, locking into perfect formation. Each ship was the size of a human city, bristling with weapons that could crack a continent in two. Beautiful, Veltar whispered, gazing at the primitive star system laid out before him like a playset. A simple yellow sun glowed at the center, circled by a few toy-like planets. His sensors focused on the third one, a little marble of blue and green. Earth. Sub-Admiral, his communications officer reported, we're picking up multiple broadcasts from the human planet. Put them on screen, Veltar ordered, leaning back in his command chair. He was expecting desperate pleas for mercy, maybe an offer of immediate surrender. He was not expecting what he heard next. Unknown alien vessels, this is Captain Marcus Chen of the Earth Defense Force. You have entered sovereign human space without authorization. Turn your fleet around immediately, or you will face the consequences. Veltar's mandibles clicked in amusement. Across the bridge, his officers chuckled. These little humans still thought they were in a position to make threats. Send them a reply, Veltar commanded. Tell them we have arrived to accept their unconditional surrender. They have 1 hour to comply, or we will take their world from them by force. The answer shot back instantly. This is Captain Chen. We do not surrender. We do not submit. If you want our world, you'll have to come and take it. The bridge erupted in laughter. These humans were either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Veltar suspected the latter. Begin the attack, he ordered. Target their orbital installations first. Let's give them a little taste of our power. The Zephyrian fleet surged forward, their energy cannons charging with a sound like rolling thunder. Veltar expected the humans to scatter in terror, to finally see the true might of the hegemony and beg for their lives. Instead, the humans attacked, and it was an attack unlike anything Veltar had ever witnessed. Human ships swarmed them from every direction at once. They launched from the planet's surface. They emerged from behind moons and asteroid fields. They even appeared from the outer planets where they'd been lying in wait. But these weren't the primitive ships from the intelligence reports. These ships just looked wrong, as if they'd been slapped together by madmen. Extra armor was crudely welded onto their hulls with no thought for aesthetics. Weapons jutted out at bizarre angles. Some ships looked like they were just massive engines strapped to even more massive bombs. "What are those?" Veltar demanded. His tactical officer frantically scanned the readings. "Sub-Admiral, they appear to be civilian vessels, heavily modified for combat. We're seeing cargo ships, passenger liners, even mining rigs. Are they trying to ram us? The answer came a few seconds later. A human ship that looked like an old freight hauler slammed into the side of a Zephyrian cruiser. But instead of just crashing, it detonated with the force of a miniature star. The Zephyrian warship split clean in two, its crew and atmosphere venting violently into the void. Impossible, Veltar breathed. They just destroyed the glorious victory with a cargo ship. More human vessels swarmed his fleet, but these weren't just ramming attacks. They were guided missiles the size of skyscrapers, piloted by humans who showed zero fear of death. Veltar watched in utter horror as ship after ship in his fleet was crippled by these insane suicide attacks. The humans had no regard for their own lives. They threw themselves at the Zaharian warships like they were trying to stop an avalanche with their bare hands. "Sir," his communications officer shouted, "we're getting a transmission from one of the human ships. Put it through." Captain Marcus Chen's face appeared on the main view screen. Behind him, Veltar could see the human's bridge was in chaos. Smoke was everywhere, and sparks rained down from shattered consoles. "You wanted to see what happens when you corner humanity?" Chen asked, his voice chillingly calm amidst the destruction. "Watch closely." The transmission died. Veltar's sensor screamed a warning as Chen's ship accelerated directly toward the Zephyrian flagship, but this wasn't just another ramming run. "Sub-Admiral," the tactical officer yelled, "that ship's reactor is going critical. It's going to blow." "Evasive maneuvers!" Veltar roared, but it was too late. Chen's ship smashed into the flagship's shields and vanished in a flash of pure energy. The explosion was so bright it overloaded every sensor in the fleet. When the screens cleared, two of the mightiest Zephyrian dreadnoughts were just gone, wiped from existence. All across the battlefield, human tactics made no sense. They defied every rule of military doctrine. They launched attacks from populated areas, using hospitals and schools as cover. When Zaharian forces tried to target military sites, they discovered the humans had moved their weapons batteries inside refugee camps and orphanages. "They're using their own people as shields," the tactical officer reported, his voice thick with disgust. But it wasn't cowardice. The humans weren't hiding behind their civilians. The civilians were fighting alongside them. Veltar watched, dumbfounded, as what looked like civilian cargo haulers armed with mining lasers swarmed his patrol ships. Old men, young women, even children were seen reloading weapon systems and hauling ammunition. This wasn't warfare as the Zephyrians knew it. This was something else entirely, something primal, desperate, and terrifyingly effective. The humans fought like cornered animals, but with the cold, calculating intelligence to make every desperate act count. "Sir, we are losing ships at a catastrophic rate," the tactical officer reported, his voice shaking. "Our casualties are at 40%. 40%? Against primitives? Veltar couldn't process it. Human technology was centuries behind theirs. Their weapons shouldn't have been able to scratch their shields. But somehow, the humans had found a way. They focused all their fire on one ship at a time, overwhelming its shields with sheer, brute force. They turned their own ships into weapons, making every single vessel a potential bomb. They used tactics no honorable warrior would ever dream of. "Sub-Admiral, another report," an officer called out. "The humans are deploying some kind of new weapon." On the screen, Veltar saw human ships launching what looked like simple metal rods. But when those rods hit the Zephyrian hulls, they passed right through the energy shields and buried themselves deep inside before detonating. "How are they bypassing our shields?" Veltar demanded. "The projectiles are too simple, sir. Our shields are designed to stop energy blasts and advanced missiles, not solid chunks of metal." It was a horrifyingly simple idea. Just giant metal rods, moving too fast. They sliced right through our shields like they weren't even there. A cold dread washed over Commander Veltar. How could this be? The humans had found a fatal flaw in our technology simply by being too primitive for our defenses to even recognize. For 6 agonizing hours, the battle was pure chaos. With every passing minute, we lost more ships to human strategies that seemed born of madness, not military science. They never retreated, even when their ships were breaking apart. They transformed every crushing defeat into a victory by making us pay a price in ships and lives that was utterly insane. When the few remaining human ships finally vanished, Veltar surveyed the ruin of his fleet. 24 ships were either space dust or too crippled to fight. We'd lost nearly 60% of our crews, fighting an enemy that should have been swat down in minutes. "Sir," his comms officer said, his voice trembling slightly, "we're receiving surrender terms." From them. For a split second, Veltar felt a surge of hope. Maybe they'd finally come to their senses, but the voice that came through the speakers wasn't a scared politician. It was calm, cold, and full of iron. It was Dr. Elena Vasquez. "To the alien fleet," she said, her voice echoing across his bridge. "You have won this battle, but you've lost something far more important. You've shown us who you are. You've taught us that mercy is a luxury we can no longer afford. Remember today, because we will." The transmission cut out. Veltar stared down at the beautiful blue and green world below. He had won. He had conquered Earth. But it felt like the most profound defeat of his career. The price had been so high it made the victory feel hollow. And worse, a chilling certainty grew in his gut. This wasn't over. Dr. Vasquez's words were a promise. The humans had learned from this fight. They'd seen our technology up close, they'd studied our tactics, and they had found our weaknesses. Veltar began to compose his report to Admiral Keithvar. How could he possibly explain that his fleet of 40 ships had been nearly shattered by a primitive world? How could he put into words the sheer terror of facing an enemy that refused to play by any civilized rules of war? He finally settled on the blunt, horrifying truth. The humans were not like any species we had ever encountered. They fought with no honor, no logic, and a terrifying disregard for their own lives. They were savage, unpredictable, and absolutely bone-chilling in their raw determination. But even as he sent the report, Veltar knew Admiral Keithvar wouldn't believe it. The High Command would see only the victory and write off his warnings as pathetic excuses for the heavy losses. They would find out the truth soon enough. The humans were still out there, hiding in the dark between the stars, and they were carrying the knowledge of our weaknesses with them. 5 years had passed since the day Earth fell. From the gleaming crystal towers on Nexus Prime, Admiral Keithvar scanned the latest reports. The mining operations on the conquered human world were exceeding all projections. The hegemony had stripped Earth's forests and carved into its mountains, pulling out priceless minerals while the surviving humans toiled away in labor camps. The Earth problem, as Keithvar smugly called it, was solved. He could not have been more wrong. Tucked away in a dense asteroid field, far from any patrol route, Dr. Elena Vasquez stood on the command deck of Station Prometheus. The entire facility was a ghost, carved out of the heart of a massive asteroid, its sprawling chambers now home to rescued survivors and salvaged alien tech. All around her, the most brilliant minds who had escaped Earth's fall were working day and night. Engineers, their faces lit by the glow of alien power cores, were figuring out how our weapons worked. Scientists were analyzing alien biology from blood samples scraped from ship hulls after the last battle, and military tacticians were planning missions that would have been unthinkable 5 years ago. "Status report," Vasquez said to Captain Sarah Rodriguez, a woman who had taken charge of military ops with a fiery vengeance after losing her family in the invasion. 73 hidden bases are now fully operational," Rodriguez reported crisply. "We have about 2 million survivors spread out across 40 different locations. Most are on old mining ships or deep space research stations the aliens consider worthless junk." Vasquez nodded, a grim smile on her face. The aliens had made a classic conqueror's mistake. They focused on the big cities and the obvious military bases. They never imagined that humanity might just scatter like dandelion seeds in the wind, taking root in tiny, forgotten corners of the galaxy. "And our gear?" she asked. "Better than we'd hoped. We've managed to reverse engineer their shield tech, though our version is pretty crude. We can't build their energy weapons, but we figured out how to supercharge our old projectile weapons using their power sources." Suddenly, Dr. James Park, the head of their science division, looked up from his console. "Elena, you have got to see this." Vasquez strode over to Park's station, where a holographic model of a Zapirian body was rotating slowly. The image detailed the alien's internal organs, each glowing a different color. "I've been going over the biological data we pulled from the battle," Park said, his eyes gleaming with excitement. "The Zapirians have some fascinating weaknesses. Their respiratory system is incredibly efficient, but it's also hypersensitive. A chemical agent that would barely give a human the sniffles could be fatal to them." "Poison gas," Vasquez stated. "Something much more elegant than that," Park corrected. "I'm developing a targeted pathogen, a virus engineered to attack only Zapirian biology, leaving every other life form completely unharmed." Vasquez leaned in, studying the molecular diagrams. "How long?" she asked, her voice low. "Give me 6 more months," Park replied, "and I'll have a working prototype." This was it. This was the kind of thinking that had kept them alive for 5 years. They couldn't match the Zapirians' tech head-on, so they found ways to go around it. They built new weapons from the scraps of the old. They developed tactics based on their enemy's arrogant psychology, not their own limited strength. Most importantly, they had finally learned to stop trying to fight, like the civilized races the aliens were used to. They had learned to fight like humans. "Commander Rodriguez," Vasquez called out, her voice ringing with new authority. "Show me what we have running right now." Rodriguez turned to the main view screen. A map of the local star systems blinked to life, showing Zapirian forces in red and suspected human operations in blue. "We're running 3 kinds of ops," Rodriguez explained, pointing to the screen. "First, simple harassment." A flurry of blue dots lit up, showing small, fast raids on remote mining outposts and supply ships. Nothing that does any real damage, but it's enough to keep them guessing and waste their resources. To the aliens, it just looked like the random, desperate acts of a few scattered survivors. They had no idea it was all being coordinated from a single, hidden command center. Second, intel. More blue dots appeared. These ones clustered around major Zapirian military bases. "We've managed to plant micro-surveillance devices on their key facilities. We know their patrol schedules, their supply chains, their communication codes, everything." Vasquez felt a surge of pride. They had burrowed into their enemy's network like a virus. "And third," Rodriguez continued, "preparation." A final set of blue dots appeared, positioned strategically near critical Zapirian targets. They weren't strong enough to attack directly, but they were perfectly placed to cause maximum chaos if they all struck at once. "How many of them even know we still exist as an organized force?" Vasquez asked. Rodriguez let out a short, harsh laugh. "Almost none. To them, we're just minor insurgent activity. Admiral Kethavar's own reports say we're a dying nuisance that will fade away on its own." Vasquez's smile was anything but kind. "Good. Let them think that." Human insurgent activity was about to get a whole lot more dangerous. "Captain Rodriguez," she said, her voice dropping to a low, determined command. "I want you to authorize Operation Ghost Ship." A wide, predatory grin spread across Rodriguez's face. "It's about damn time." Ghost Ship was the single most daring plan humanity had ever conceived. Using captured alien technology, their engineers had built a new class of warship that registered on Zapirian sensors as nothing more than space junk. Drifting asteroids, dead satellites, shattered pieces of old wrecks. But hidden beneath the garbage camouflage was a fully armed and operational battleship. The genius of the plan was purely psychological. The Zephyrians were an arrogant race, utterly convinced of their technological superiority. The very idea that a primitive species like humans could hide from their advanced sensors was, to them, literally unthinkable. "Start with the Kepler mining station," Vasquez ordered. "And I want it all recorded. I want every second of it broadcast on every open channel in hegemony space." The Kepler mining station was a textbook Zephyrian operation. Huge, automated extractors chewing up a dead planet, guarded by a small, complacent garrison. After 5 years without any real resistance, they had gotten lazy. They paid no attention to the 3 large asteroids that had been slowly drifting closer to their station for the past week. The attack began at what the old Earth calendars called 0 hour. Suddenly, the asteroids came alive. Their rocky outer shells cracked and fell away, revealing the sleek, predatory warships hidden inside. By the time the Zephyrian sensors screamed in alarm, human weapons were already firing. But this was nothing like the desperate, suicidal charges from 5 years ago. These humans had learned. They used the enemy's own technology against them. Their kinetic cannons fired projectiles coated in materials that looked like random debris to the alien sensors. Their shields, powered by jury-rigged Zephyrian generators, flickered at frequencies that confused enemy targeting systems. The station's garrison never even got a distress call out. The humans jammed their communications, disabled their weapons, and then dismantled every defensive system with terrifying precision. Within an hour, the entire facility was a silent, burning wreck. But the most terrifying part of the attack, for the Zephyrians who would later see the recordings, was what the humans did last. They didn't just destroy the station, they boarded it. And they downloaded everything, the entire central computer, every personnel file, all operational protocols, communication ciphers, supply schedules, everything. And then, they were gone. All that remained was a message, spray-painted across the station's hull in letters so huge they could be read from orbit. Earth remembers. This was just the beginning. Similar strikes started popping up all across hegemony territory. Mining outposts would suddenly go silent. Cargo ships would blink off the map, never to be seen again. Garrison commanders would wake up to find their bases crippled by sabotage that defied all logic. The Zephyrians scrambled to fight back, but they were chasing phantoms. Human ships registered as nothing more than space junk right up until the moment they opened fire. Human spies used stolen Zephyrian tech to stroll right through their most advanced security systems. Their battle plans were chaotic, unpredictable, and broke every rule of civilized warfare. But the worst part? The humans seemed to know the Zephyrians' every move. They always hit at the perfect time, in the perfect place, with the perfect strategy to inflict the most possible pain. What the Zephyrian Empire didn't know was that for 5 long years, humanity had been watching and learning. They had mapped out every single hegemony operation, memorizing patrol schedules, supply lines, communication codes, and security routines. Dr. Park's biological weapons were ready to go well ahead of schedule. The engineers had perfected their ghost ship technology. Captain Rodriguez and his tactical squads had pinpointed hundreds of high-value targets. And most importantly, Dr. Vasquez had created something the Zephyrians could never predict or defend against. A strategy built not on conquest, but on pure, crippling terror. The hegemony was accustomed to fighting honorable wars against civilized races who played by the rules and followed predictable strategies. They had never encountered an enemy who threw the rulebook out the airlock. The humans had no interest in capturing Zephyrian territory. They wanted to tear the hegemony down, piece by piece. They weren't just aiming for ships and planets. They were targeting the Zephyrians' confidence, their arrogance, their fundamental sense of being safe in their own empire. Every single attack screamed the same terrifying message. Nowhere is safe. No one can be trusted. And your precious technology isn't nearly as special as you think. From his crystal tower on the capital world of Nexus Prime, Admiral Kethvar was getting field reports that were utterly baffling. Entire facilities were being wiped out by attackers who were never even seen. Ships were disappearing without so much as a distress signal. Critical equipment was failing at the absolute worst moments. His advisors offered up a dozen flimsy excuses: maintenance backlogs, freak accidents, random system failures, the usual headaches of running a massive empire. Kethvar waved away their concerns. The hegemony was invincible. Their technology was unmatched. The very idea that a few scattered human survivors could pose a threat to his 847 star systems was laughable. Yet deep in the back of his mind, a tiny voice whispered a warning he refused to acknowledge. It reminded him of Dr. Vasquez's final chilling broadcast. "Remember this day, because we will." The humans had remembered. They had learned. And now, they were coming for them. The War Council chamber on Nexus Prime was electric with anxiety. Admiral Kethvar glared at the holographic map of hegemony space, but it all looked wrong. Dozens of angry red icons flagged Zephyron installations that had suffered catastrophic technical failures in the last month. "Walk me through this again," Kethvar snapped, jabbing a finger toward a cluster of red dots in the Riel sector. General Thexala shifted nervously. "Sir, the mining station at Kepler 442 experienced a total reactor meltdown. We lost everyone. The transport ship Stellar Pride had a navigation glitch and flew directly into an asteroid field. And the garrison at Vega 7 reported a cascade of equipment malfunctions right before we lost contact." Kethvar's mandibles clicked in annoyance. "And you're telling me these are all just coincidences?" "What other explanation is there, sir?" Thexala pleaded. "Our intelligence confirms the human survivors are just scattered refugees, barely hanging on. They don't have the resources or the coordination to attack hegemony property." But Kethvar knew better. He'd been hearing unsettling stories from his commanders on the front lines. Whispers of ships that looked like asteroids until they started shooting. Raids that showed an impossible, intimate knowledge of Zephyran security codes. System failures that were just too perfectly timed to be accidental. "Pull up the Kepler 442 incident," he commanded. The hologram shifted, displaying the twisted floating wreckage of the mining station. The place had been torn apart. But what made Kethvar freeze was the message scrawled on a massive piece of the outer hull. "Earth remembers." "Sir," General Thexala said weakly, "that could be anyone. Other rebel groups trying to pin the blame on the humans." Before Kethvar could argue, his communications officer burst into the room. "Admiral, it's an emergency broadcast from Sub-Admiral Veltar at the Centauri Deep Space Facility." The main view screen flickered to life, showing Veltar's face. The young admiral looked horrified, his usual smug confidence completely gone. "Admiral Kethvar, we're being attacked by an invisible enemy. Our sensors show nothing but space debris, but we are taking heavy damage from all sides." In the background, explosions rocked the bridge. Alarms blared as Zephyran crew members shouted frantically in their melodic tongue. "Sir, they've cracked our comms codes! They're blocking our transmissions!" The feed dissolved into static. Kethvar stared at the dead screen, his mind reeling. The entire War Council was frozen in stunned silence. "Get me a line to the Centauri facility, now!" Kethvar roared. "Sir," the officer replied, his voice trembling. "We can't. We've lost all contact." Light years away, Dr. Vasquez watched the Centauri facility burn from the bridge of her flagship, the Resurrection. The ship itself was a Frankenstein's monster, built from the captured hull of a Zephyran dreadnought, retrofitted with human ingenuity and crewed by survivors who had absolutely nothing left to lose. "The facility is ours," Captain Rodriguez reported, his voice calm and steady. "Defenses are down. Garrison has been neutralized. Our casualties were next to none. The ghost ship protocol worked like a charm. They never even knew we were there." Vasquez gave a slow, deliberate nod. This was the 15th major Zephyrin installation they had erased in just 1 month. Each strike was a carbon copy of the last. Slip in disguised as space junk, block all communications, hit them fast and hard, steal all their data, leave a calling card, and vanish. But this one was special. This was the kickoff for Operation Prometheus. "Dr. Park, are your teams in place?" A second screen lit up with the scientist's face. He was on a stealth ship, orbiting the Zephyrin homeworld itself. "We are ready for deployment, Elena," he confirmed. "The atmospheric processors on Nexus Prime are completely unguarded. It never even occurred to them that someone would attack the very air they breathe." Park's biological agent was a work of twisted human genius. It wasn't designed to kill the Zephyrins. It was designed to turn their sky blood red for months. Every time they looked up, they would be reminded of humanity's rage. "Captain Morris, give me a status report on the network breach." A third screen showed Captain David Morris, a man who used to be a humble programmer, but was now humanity's deadliest cyber warrior. "We're in," he said with a grin. "It took us 3 years, but we finally broke their quantum encryption and found a back door. The second you give the word, we can unleash our virus across every major Zephyrin network at the exact same time." A feeling of cold, grim satisfaction settled over Vasquez. The Zephyrins had built their entire empire on the belief that their technology made them gods. They were about to find out what happens when that technology is turned into a weapon against them. "All teams," she commanded, her voice echoing across the fleet. "Commence Operation Prometheus." Across the vast expanse of hegemony space, human forces that had remained hidden for 5 years finally showed their teeth. But this wasn't a war. This was something else entirely. It was a perfectly coordinated campaign to shatter the Zephyrins' faith in their own superiority. On Nexus Prime, Dr. Park's team released their agent into the planet's atmosphere processors. Within hours, the sky began to bleed. The familiar blue faded to a sickly purple, and then to a deep, angry red. The effect would linger for months, a permanent scar in the sky to remind them that human science could strike at the very heart of their empire. At the same instant, on 17 of their most important worlds, Captain Morris's virus went live. But it wasn't a simple weapon of destruction. It was designed to make Zephyrin technology unreliable in terrifyingly specific ways. Defense shields would suddenly drop in the middle of a fight. Communication hubs would start broadcasting human propaganda instead of official orders. Life support systems would develop small but frightening glitches, reminding every Zephyrin just how fragile their technologically dependent lives really were. But the most brutal blow was saved for their military database. The virus replaced all their training simulations and tactical manuals with high-definition recordings of their own forces being annihilated by human attacks. Now, every time a Zephyrin officer tried to study war, they would be forced to watch videos of their own ships burning. "Admirals of the hegemony," Dr. Vasquez said, her voice hijacking every military channel in the Empire. "My name is Elena Vasquez. You might remember me. We spoke at our first diplomatic meeting 8 years ago." Her face appeared on every screen. But this wasn't the hopeful scientist who had dreamed of peace. This was a woman whose eyes burned with the cold fire of someone who had lost everything and found something much harder than despair in the ashes. "You ignored our warnings. You called us primitives, too insignificant to even be considered a threat. You burned our world and enslaved my people because you were convinced your technology made you invincible." Behind her, the bridge of the resurrection was a picture of calm, deadly efficiency. These weren't refugees fighting for scraps. They were professional soldiers who had spent 5 years sharpening their rage into a weapon. "You were wrong," she continued, her voice like ice. Technology isn't what makes a species strong. Willpower is what makes a species strong. The will to never give in, to never surrender, and to never, ever stop fighting for what you've lost. On the main screen behind her, a montage began to play. Zaphiran bases exploding, their mighty ships torn asunder, and the terrified faces of aliens as they watched their precious technology betray them. You know, you aliens taught us a valuable lesson, that mercy is a luxury we simply can't afford. So we learned. We adapted. We became something you can no longer comprehend. Humans with absolutely nothing left to lose. The broadcast flashed more images across the screen. We showed Zapirian prisoners being treated well in our facilities, proving that even after everything, we hadn't lost our souls. But then, we showed the smoking ruins of your worlds, a clear message that our mercy has its limits. Your empire stretches across 847 star systems. It could have been 848 if you'd just chosen friendship instead of conquest. But you didn't. You taught us that the only language you understand is brute force. As more explosions lit up the screen, more of your empire burned. But the most chilling images were still to come. We know everything about you, your patrol schedules, your supply lines, your security codes, all your weaknesses. For 5 long years, while you thought we were broken, we were watching, learning, and getting ready. The final image appeared, a complete map of your space, with our forces marked in red. There were hundreds of them, positioned near every single one of your major strongholds. This isn't some random act of terror. This isn't a desperate cry for revenge. This is war, fought by people who have learned to turn your own arrogance against you. From his command center, Admiral Kethvar watched it all, a cold dread creeping into his heart. The map showed our forces everywhere, hiding in the asteroid fields and cosmic junkyards your advanced sensors always ignored. The attacks you've seen so far? That's just the beginning. Dr. Vasquez's voice continued. We have weapons you can't detect, tactics you can't predict, and a will you can never ever break. We are the species that crawled out of caves to reach for the stars. We are the species that splits atoms and bends the fabric of space itself. Her voice turned to ice. We are humanity, and we are angry. The broadcast ended, leaving Zapirian commanders across the galaxy staring at blank screens, finally grasping the true nightmare they had unleashed. On his home planet, Nexus Prime, Admiral Kethvar looked up at the red sky and realized his empire's greatest foe wasn't another conquering civilization. It was a species that wanted something much more dangerous than victory. They wanted justice. 6 months after our operation, codenamed Prometheus, began, Admiral Kethvar stood in the ruins of his command center. The crystal walls were spiderwebbed with cracks from our attacks. The red sky bled light through the gaping holes in the ceiling. The greatest military mind in the Zapirian hegemony couldn't figure out how they had been so completely and utterly defeated. The reports painted a picture of impossible destruction. 43 of their worlds were now just smoldering ruins, scarred by weapons that shouldn't even exist. Their once unstoppable fleet was scattered, too terrified to group up because we seemed to know their every move before they made it. Status report, he demanded. Kethvar's voice was heavy with exhaustion. General Theoxala looked at his cracked datapad. Sir, we've lost contact with 17 core systems. The outer colonies are reporting constant raids by human forces. Our supply lines are a complete disaster. And our fleet? Kethvar asked. 60% casualties, sir. The surviving ships want to fall back to the inner systems. Theoxala paused. But what is it, General? It's just, the humans seem to be everywhere. Our captains are saying that even in systems where there are no known humans, their equipment is failing at the worst possible moments. They're afraid to trust their own tech. Kethvar knew that fear. The humans had done something worse than just blowing up their ships. They had shattered the Zapirian belief in their own superiority. Now, every piece of technology was suspicious. Every routine jump could be a human trap. The empire that had conquered 847 systems with its advanced tech was now scared of that very same technology. "Sir," his communications officer cut in, "we're getting a message. Through a third party, the humans. They're asking for a meeting." "A meeting?" "They want to discuss terms, sir, on neutral ground." A cold knot formed in Kethvar's stomach. The humans weren't offering to surrender. They were demanding his. 2 days later, Kethvar's shuttle touched down in the rubble of his own throne room. The giant crystal chamber, where he'd once plotted the conquest of worlds, was now open to the red sky. Broken walls and shattered decorations were a testament to the human attack that had broken Nexus Prime's defenses. Dr. Elena Vasquez was waiting for him. She stood right in the middle of the ruins, dressed in simple, practical clothes, not some fancy uniform. Behind her, human soldiers stood guard, wearing our captured Zephyrian armor. But it was her eyes that struck Kethvar the most. 5 years ago, she had been a hopeful scientist looking for peaceful contact. The woman standing before him now had been forged in war and loss. Her eyes carried the weight of billions of human deaths and the grim satisfaction of justice finally being served. "Admiral Kethvar," she said, her voice even. "Dr. Vasquez." He walked toward her slowly, his 6 arms spread wide in a gesture of peace. "You wanted to discuss terms?" "No," she said. "I want you to understand what you've lost." She motioned to the wreckage around them. "This was your center of power. From here, you decided the fates of entire species. Do you remember what you said when you got our first peaceful message?" Kethvar's mandibles clicked with nerves. We underestimated your capabilities." "No," she corrected him. "You underestimated our spirit." She walked over to the twisted metal that used to be his throne. "You saw our simple tech and assumed we were weak. You thought our restraint was a sign of weakness." "We made errors in judgment," he stammered. Dr. Vasquez spun around to face him. "Admiral, you ruled 847 star systems. You could have had 848 if you had just offered friendship instead of war. Your empire could have traded with us, learned from us, and grown stronger with us." She paused, letting the reality of that squandered future hang in the air. "Instead, you chose to teach us that mercy was a luxury we couldn't afford." Kethvar felt her words like body blows. The hegemony's own arrogance had created the monster that was now tearing it apart. By dismissing us, they had forced us to become the one enemy that could actually destroy them. "What do you want?" he finally asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Justice," she replied, activating a hologram that showed the current state of his empire. Red zones marked worlds now under our control or too damaged to matter. Yellow zones showed areas where Zephyrian forces were still fighting, but losing. The green zones, the safe territories, were tiny and scattered. "Your empire is finished, Admiral, not because we destroyed it, but because we proved it was never as strong as you thought." Kethvar stared at the map. Even the so-called safe zones looked fragile. We had shown we could strike anywhere, any time, with weapons and strategies their military could not even begin to understand. "The species you conquered are all watching," Dr. Vasquez went on. "They see that the great and powerful hegemony can be brought to its knees by a primitive race that turned your own technology against you. Some of them are already declaring their independence. Others are forming alliances to fight you." This was true. Reports of rebellions were flooding in from all over. Species that had been under Zephyrian rule for centuries were now seeing their chance. "What are your terms?" Kethvar asked, defeated. Dr. Vasquez nodded, and her soldiers brought forward a case. "The Soul Accords," she said. "This isn't a peace treaty. These are your terms of surrender." Kethvar read the document, his astonishment growing with every line. For a defeated empire, the terms were shockingly fair. Zapirian worlds could govern themselves. Their technology wouldn't be taken. Their people would be treated with dignity. But there were conditions. No military forces beyond what's needed for system defense, he read out loud. No expansion into new space. Full reparations to all enslaved species. Immediate release of all prisoners. And, Dr. Vasquez prompted. Kethvar found the last part. Recognition of human space as a sovereign territory. All Zapirian forces must withdraw behind a new, established boundary. He looked up at her. You're splitting the galaxy. No, she said. We're setting rules. Your empire will survive, Admiral, but its days of growing through conquest are over. Humanity will watch over this sector of space, she explained. We'll make sure that new species get to develop on their own terms, not yours. Kethvar thought about it. It was a complete humiliation, but it was also survival. The only other option was to watch his entire civilization get wiped out as we continued our relentless campaign. And if we refuse? He asked. Dr. Vasquez's expression didn't change, but the air around her grew heavy. Then we finish what we started. We've already destroyed 43 of your worlds. We can easily destroy 43 more, and another 43 after that. We've learned patience, Admiral. We can take as long as it takes. She took a step closer to him. But maybe you'd like to avoid that. Maybe, just maybe, you've finally learned something from watching your empire burn. Kethvar thought about the chaos gripping his people. Ships being destroyed by invisible enemies. Bases sabotaged by ghosts. Technology failing them at every turn. His people were terrified of an enemy they couldn't see, couldn't fight, and couldn't predict. Even worse, they now knew their technological superiority had been a lie all along. We had proven that simple weapons, guided by a smarter strategy, could beat any defense. I will sign your accords, he said at last. Good, Dr. Vasquez replied, holding out a pen. But before you sign anything, she said, walking over to a massive hole blown in the wall, I want you to get one thing straight. From there, they could see the red, scarred landscape of Nexus Prime. When we first met your people, we held out a hand in friendship. We told you not to mistake our kindness for weakness, hoping you'd be smart enough to listen. We gave you every chance to live up to the noble civilization you pretended to be. She turned, her eyes locking onto his. But you chose the fist over the open hand. You heard our warnings not as advice, but as a challenge. You practically begged us to become the monster you always thought we were. As Kethvar reached for the stylus to sign the treaty, Dr. Vasquez added one last thing. Right now, children back on Earth are watching this. On holographic displays, they're learning a lesson from all of this. They see the planets you burned, the fleets we shattered, and the empire you lost, and their teachers are explaining the most important lesson humanity has ever taught the galaxy. She watched him sign the Sol Accords, the document that officially crumbled the Zaharian hegemony's reign of terror. And what lesson is that? Kethvar asked, his voice barely a whisper. Dr. Vasquez gave him a smile that was all ice and no warmth. Never mistake restraint for weakness. When a human says, "You really don't want to make us do this," they're giving you one final chance to walk away before you find out why. Outside, the toxic red haze that had choked the skies of Nexus Prime finally started to clear. A parting gift from Dr. Park's biological weapon. The sky was healing, but the lesson would scar forever. Across the entire galaxy, worlds that had trembled in fear of the Zaharians started telling new stories. They were legends about the quiet, peaceful humans who simply refused to be victims. They spoke of Earth's children, now venturing out among those same stars, carrying a simple message. No empire, no matter how powerful, can survive a war against its own arrogance. A new era of human expansion was dawning, and it was going to be built on wisdom, not warfare.